could be a sheep that magically has survived 150 years and is the same sheep, or even it could be a wool that has been shaved off the sheep in 1890 and put in a canvas bag in a dry, ventilated outlet, so it is practically new even 150 years later, and suddenly to yarn it, to loom it, but with one of those modern machines from the place called Quack, in Scotland, but it will make a different wool, a different cloth, because the loom is completely different. So, these are not absolute historical accuracy, these are actually just basics, which are never even, I think, taken into consideration, except by a very few amount of people. I mean, even not consideration for actually even just thinking of doing it, but simply considerations of even having simply thought of it. I think there's people making cloth as obsessed by sewing and all, but they just forget that to them it is like if you talk to me about Martians on, like aliens on Mars, if you suddenly came to me and said there's a life on Mars, there's nothing I could care less about. I don't care if there's a whole society on Mars of cows or human-like people, because it is super far away. What would I care? I would never see them anyhow. Good for them, they're alive there. But say if you try to be like me and down to earth, it becomes actually completely plausible if you spend as much time, energy. Again, the time is relative. What you can do in 2 hours, I may be able to do in half an hour. What you can do in half an hour, I may take 8 hours to do it. So time does not really mean anything, but if you put as much energy, and you obviously have to be passionate about it, also it is going to be a chore and horrible. So you have to, even if you hate it at first, try to be passionate by it and love it, and if you still hate it, or at least after 1 year still very much dislike it and still sort of see it as a chore, sort of stop it. But if you put as much energy into it, and persistency, because at first, and you will constantly find obstacles once one desires to do something that nobody else does. Or nowadays, there's never been so many humans. Obviously, there have never been so many people in the last 50 years doing that, but in percent it is extremely small compared to the vast majority of people. So it would be very hard. You will find many obstacles which even barely 100 years ago would have been surmountable without even thinking, which now become obstacles. But if you are as persistent as I, as in my energy, the energy I put in finding used pieces, because again, as per my philosophy, I do not desire to create anything new. There has been a ton of created items, and the earth is literally riddled with the garbage called humanity, and our garbages, physical garbages, whether it be even a table, even a wooden table like that is a garbage. In fact, for us it is not, but for the planet it is. It pollutes the earth, we pollute everywhere, so we might as well use things already used. But I try my best to find the oldest or the closest possible thing to that era, or the closest alike, but that has already been created. If you put as much energy into that, you will be able to even be more historically accurate than I, in the sense that you will not have like a Warmicky Pence, which is a very good imitation of a lot of reproduction. Everything will be an actual reproduction, even sort of died the same way, because I was astonished by when I just researched yesterday, that actually still, the London Cloth Company uses these old machines, some of them then back to, he says he has all the machines, he has a whole collection of machines from the first era of machines, even there's something that work with water, or maybe just after that. So I think from 1850 or 40 till 1940, it has so many looms. Obviously, it does not have all the looms that existed on Earth, every loom model that existed for 1840, then 1841, then 1842. But I mean, he has one from at least each decade, sort of. He has one from the early 90s. I think he said it was from 1901, 92. It was the same way. I think he only changed the way the fuel functions, so it uses electricity instead of coal or fuel, as in petrol. But that will not affect the yard in itself, the spinning of the cloth. It will only affect how the machine, it will only affect the fan, there's no smoke. Well, it will not affect in any mode, he did not alter anything else, it will not affect how the cloth looks. Basically, if I were to start the cloth, even if I were to become a cloth expert, which I'm not, I will not be able to tell, well, was that machine used, powered by by coal, let one say, like it initially was, or has he changed the engine to a certain degree so that it can be operated on a modern battery? No, it did not change any other components. So, and if he did replace some parts, it was because they were ultimately broken, and he had to either replace it with original parts, which is more likely to happen because it would be easier, I guess, than recreating a part. But I think it did not even necessitate that. It simply is intact, and so on. And he can spin, he can loom cotton or linen or silk or whatever you design that machine, not simply wool yarns. He can do a mixture or whatever. So, and other people are actually doing that. I think it is one of the most authentic, at least in Britain. But I have no idea. I just discovered that word of looming and all. I was not into cloth making before that. I just literally discovered it yesterday and so on. So it is actually much more doable. It's not because the body is doing it. If one gets into that spirit, it is not because the body is doing it that it is very hard to do. This becomes a sort of obsession in that, for example, until the 1960s, nobody was even trying to recreate in the least how things were done before in terms of at least clothing. And suddenly, and so probably back then people thought it was impossible to do, but suddenly they started doing it with the BBC, I guess. And to realize it was not hard at all. So now one has to get just the next level. And everything has been learned about how to recreate sewing, even way before, even much harder techniques that had to be completely rediscovered because no written or even physical traces really existed. Barely just a few paintings from the Middle Ages or Antiquity, and people have managed to recreate those techniques. So it is very easy to do the 1890s techniques, especially of England, which back then was the most modern country, do not forget. People have a tendency of thinking now Britain is sort of supposedly the most old-fashioned place in Western Europe. It actually is not, I think, but it sort of is in some regards. That only began after World War I, when they were completely destroyed, and instead of trying to catch up on the USA, they instead thought, well, you know what, we would differentiate, we would keep on differentiating ourselves, not by being the most avant-garde at that time, but by being the most where culture was being preserved. So suddenly it became the opposite. And it became even more so after World War II, which to some degrees World War I had not completely destroyed England. It had destroyed the British Empire, but not England as a whole. It had destroyed France and Germany and other places. But World War II, people try to remember Hitler actually bombed England. Basically what had survived of England up until the Victorian era, which had not been destroyed by World War I, was completely destroyed by World War II. So, after World War II, there was sort of, well, we have to be even more old-fashioned in order to stand out, and sort of people still taking us seriously, but in fact, they lost all their money and heritage and beautiful culture. And thus it is the England of today, which is has nothing to do with the Victorian era. So obviously, people have never been so rich and intellectually knowledge and such a high quality of life. But the whole culture of arts was destroyed in the early 20th century by the new art movements, which I completely hate, like the Dada movement and all. To me, this is not art. To me, these are... But whatever, I'm getting very off track. So, anyhow, all these things have been written down in manuals and all. They can easily be found. It was never so easy to find them in the last 40 years thanks to the internet. Anyone, even in Turkmenistan, may easily type a few words on Google and find books and scan images. And so, possibly speaking, the only real true problem I find is actually getting it dyed the same way. But to some degrees, I think, I have no idea, I've just got into that. So what I meant was, it has all been rediscovered, the sewing and the things, how to be knitted, or how to be loomed, or even how to spun threads, what type of breeds of animals we used. In Japan, they still do silk the same manner than in China. They still do it since antiquity the same way. Some people still do it. The art is not really dead there. And for the silks and so on and so forth. But now one has to take it to the same level and think, well, now we have to put all that together. And if you cannot fit in originals like most modern men can, or modern women, because most modern women want to dress not like men, whereby it will be easy because most modern women are actually the same height than most men back then. But we're told that women back then, so they also face the same problem of not fitting into womanly garments that are originals. Well, now that you all know how to sew it how to construct it